Coming up next, This Week in Robot Combat takes a look back at the news of 2020. And as this is the last continuity announcement of this year, I'd just like to thank you for all of your support throughout it and wish you a happy new year. Well, it is New Year's Eve, and it's that time again where we reflect on what happened this year. Oh God. But it hasn't all been doom and gloom, just a large majority of it. No, some of it was some wonderful good news, and especially for the robot combat front, we got lots of good news, partially because some of the stories happened twice because they got rescheduled, partially because lots of people carried on building throughout all of this year. Can you call it a year? I want to call it a mess. This is This Week in Robot Combat, a look back at 2020. The year began in January, as it tends to do, and we got to see some teams preparing themselves for if an imminent series of BattleBots was on the way, namely Whiplash here. Bristol Bot Builders announced that the Beetle Championships would be taking place once again at UE. What happy optimism we all had. The minds behind Monsoon, Tim Rackers and Tom Brewster put together a new podcast, something that we were looking forward to being a regular occurrence. Good Robotle's Charlie Hubbard made the RA2 2019 BattleBots pack. Good fun had by all. Meanwhile, BattleBots was still going on, and things were happening in Big Spinner Land as Daedalus was tearing up the competition. But not Thunderchild.
Never Thunderchild.
Carbide's bar went up for sale on eBay, Farouk called in a load of robots in the BattleBots basement tapes, and things got cut out by Team Monsoon, probably the podcast. Meanwhile, your own Leverloo told us all about his wonderful machine, the Bash, before tearing it apart and selling bits of it on eBay. Do you remember back in the day when we used to have live events? Well, one of them happened over in Ireland, and Immersion took home a giant sword. This was probably a trophy, but we'll never know for sure. Rumbles were afoot as things started to heat up in BuggleBots. Meanwhile, Craig Danby was showing us his new robot, Slammo, and Robots Live were making some sort of house robot. Meanwhile, BuggleBots revealed their wildcards, including fan favourite Jester, that we'd only ever seen in Amway Anarchy. This was kind of a big deal for fan-made Robot Wars producers. Probably. February, it seems so long ago. About 5 years? Anyway, BuggleBots concluded, K2 were crowned the champion, making all of this a bit pointless. Meanwhile, Snappy took home the wooden spoon. Well done to them. Ant Freeze, a live event for Antweights, was held, and a tiny little robot did a spinny thing, and another tiny little robot put a hole in a battery by drilling. Robo Dojo kicked off their 2020 events with a featherweight sportsman competition. Craig Danby made exercising fun by making it into a robot instead. And then all of a sudden, BattleBots was back. They announced the dates, the times, the filming slots, and everything looked to be amazing. I'd bought tickets, I was going to BattleBots, it was very, very, very exciting. We were introduced to a new Beetleweight, let the good times roll. I'm sure this robot will have nothing to do with it later on. But who cares? BattleBots was making the headlines. 50 hours of content we were promised. 50 hours! And they were going to premiere May the 15th at 8 PM. It was very, very exciting. Unless, of course, you were a fan of Blacksmith, Bronco, Bombshell or Yeti, because they weren't going. But who cares? Shiny Metal Shark! Meanwhile, we had a wild weekend of smaller weight class fun as Motorama and, wait, where's Yui gone? Who cares? SXS happened both at the same time. Lots of robot combat, lots of fun, and a robot got hanged from the ceiling. You love to see it. Rip Couch Potato. Polystorm won the Gladiator, and Dwayne Nibley came third in the competition, with Gear Down for What in second, and Let the Good Times Roll coming first. Hexbug announced their new Rivals pack, looking very unfinished indeed, and then it was March. March was filled with excitement to start with, as people were losing their tiny minds over BattleBots. The robots were being released, announced to the public. Things like Gloomweaver, a big walking spider, oh my god, a clusterbot called Jaeger, Chomp was walking, Orion was a robot from the UK, a giant nut was born, oh good lord, I need to lay down, but there was no time for that as BuggleBots did the UK versus the rest of the world. Then if you weren't already hyped enough, BattleBots got a new logo out of nowhere. Wonderful surprise, and then we got so excited we beheaded a flamingo. Wait, hang on YouTube, please no, this is not animal cruelty. Team Shock started playing with featherweights and never really stopped actually, and Lego robots were roaming the arena once again. And then the world stopped. couldn't ignore COVID-19 any longer. It was no longer just in China, it was no longer just in Asia, it was around the world. It was in the UK, it was in America. It was affecting all of our lives. And there was no stopping it. As death rates rose into the thousands, things had to stop. BattleBots, Extreme Robots, Robots Live, the lot of it. And while some builders stopped at this point, others carried on building. The Bristol bot builders introduced us to Bish Bash Bosh. Myself and Anderson managed to finally get out that special that was meant to be coming out last year. P1 Evo got to be finished, and we got to see it all shown off. A new version of Wormgear would be competing on the UK scene just as soon as we could get it, and all of the BattleBots basement tapes were up on YouTube. And, of course, we started the big bot quiz. So not all bad then. Team Waiachi surprised us with some wonderful photos of Hydra all completely painted and their new bot Fusion as well. Rebel Wars Shump posting a Facebook group online did a wonderful little competition for people to build robots made of scraps. Boat Saxon 07's channel turned 10 years old, one of the oldest of the robot community. Vanguard was shown off by Jack Tweedy, and Team Shock kept building featherweights, they just didn't stop. And why should they? Other teams were also building. Team Get Shrek'd had this wonderful little thing called Shrek'd Force, oh good grief, I can't wait to see that on the live scene. Gabriel went brushless, and Raphael did some weapon testing. Meanwhile, Bloodsport revealed that they would be a single billet chassis. Will Bales of Hypershock released a video showing off the new Shreemec system, and then it was May. As lockdowns and COVID-19 guidelines continued, BattleBots thought they would check in and make sure that everyone was okay, and also give a little update as to what they were doing. They explored ways of getting the show to us. Teams carried on building. You can see here some double jeopardy and some rotator action. The rotator smacked something across a car park, and Saint went brushless too, just for the hell of it. Jimmy Cotton revealed to us his wonderful new ant weight scale arena that he was building. B as for BattleBots was read to us with several robot cameos, and this very scary thing from Get Shrek'd's team was teased online. Bristol bot builders had been hard at work making some new Beetleweight ESCs loved and adored by all, and Mr. Psycho got a heavyweight robot in Super Collider. Meanwhile, Craig Danby built La Machine, but smaller, and called La Mochine. Meanwhile, Slammo got a new front wedge, and also new paint job. King of Bots started doing weird things, no idea what happened there, and then Robo Nerd was postponed, which is a shame. However, Charlie Hubbard was keeping things positive by releasing the BuggleBots pack. Meanwhile, TR3 were bringing the mood down by showing us wrecked versions of their robot. Everyone cried one roo as the wonderful Drizzle disc went up for sale. Crossblow 2 was very nearly completed by Team Mott and Bailey, and then they locked up Ian and Will Thomas for making too many featherweights. In the summer, things seemed to be on the up. While physical robot combat couldn't happen, the YouTube side of things really took off. We got to see first looks at robots like Ominous, like Smee, like all of the wonderful robots that we would get to see this year, and potentially robots we get to see in the future as well. We got to see Bloodsport smash up a load of things. We got to see more Roboteers in lockdown getting interviewed. We even got to see the startings of some robots' next generations. But that's not all. The people at Extreme Robots were starting to think about what could happen if you could remotely drive robots online. A chassis of an old robot went up for sale, a BuggleBots legend indeed. With summer heating up, I took the show out into the bar. Malice took the show to the big spinner, the Drumette. We got a first look at Aegis, a wonderful flipper bot we hope to see in BattleBots very soon. And then an Antweight and a Beetleweight event happened, socially distant and invite only, the first robot combat we'd seen in months. Trey Roski took to the internet, giving an update on how they were making BattleBots COVID safe. Team ULL showed us some CAD of the new version of Deadbot, and an iron ore chassis became a table. In July, things were so much more positive. We got our first look at the very shiny new version of Shatter, very gorgeous indeed. A new robot appeared online from BattleBots, a little teaser of what's to come. Rhubarb was bought by Team Shock, and the restoration began. Your only Valoo played that Extreme Robots fighting experience. However, in July as well, Mitch left ESC, and we wish him all the best. Maker Faire Miami was advertised. It would be online this year, and Behind the Bots would be hosting panels for the BattleBots teams. More action came as Robo Dojo had an event socially distant and invite only, as did the wonderful Norwalk Havoc that has become a regular treat throughout 2020. Lots of fun had, and Shredded Bro the winner of the first competition. Well done to them. And BashBots returned to our screens on YouTube for another series of robot combat fun. Unfortunately, it was at this time that we lost Grant Imahara. Grant was a legend of BattleBots, competing for many years with his robot Deadblow. He meant so much to so many, and he will be so dearly missed. Rest in peace, Grant Imahara. The news got a rebrand and a new lick of paint to look far more professional. Duck's new bill went quack, 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 and Beta went pff, pff. Probably, I don't know what sound that makes. Get Shrek tore up the competition in the arena as Robo Dojo continued to do live events, and Bish Bash Bosh unfortunately caught fire. That is a shame. Meanwhile, Rev got a redesign. This thing looks absolutely smashing, and Extreme Robots did a ball-grabbing machine. Because why not? The Dominus Ignis, otherwise known as Sean, was announced as the new host of ESC, and good grief. Is that Two Mugs of Tea podcast recording again? Surely not. In August, we were starting to see some Hexbug sets on the shelves. The new set, Rotating the Ducks, is our favourite game. They hate that. Meanwhile, Robo Nerd was announced to be an online event this year, looking very exciting indeed. Team Immersion introduced us to a load of new featherweights, and Crossblow was finally completed with its new 4-bar flipper. Meanwhile, a terahertz style featherweight by Team Tilly was created, and more live events were happening around the world. Jimmy Cottam started building his Beetle, but did not finish. No More Spinners began, and we started losing our mind over robots, and Sharkoprion went up for adoption. Meanwhile, we were introduced to Team Boltergeist and their lovely Hammerbot with a big bat hammer. Recyclops got a Beetleweight version made, and then it was time for the creators to make it their own, as RoboNerd TV took to YouTube the many outfits of Craig and Joe, the wonderful Dead Metal full-scale replica, and much, much more proved to be a wonderful day of entertainment. Meanwhile, teasers for LEGO Wars, and then a teaser for BattleBots. It was coming back. In September, things were getting hyped even more, as we found out the robots that would and wouldn't be coming to BattleBots this year. Bike Force announced their absence, while Endgame announced that they were making international travel possible because there were no travel bans in New Zealand. Gigabyte went all Guy Fieri on us, and then we were introduced to the wonderful Jackpot that would be competing this year as well. We were also introduced to Axolotl, a school team that were making a big name for themselves. Two Mugs of Tea started doing a mystery recording with a special guest, and Bunyip took a trophy in Australia. Meanwhile, back to BattleBots, and Beta were going to make the travel from the UK. They'd have to self-isolate though. Tombstone was getting ready its armoury of weapons. We were introduced to the Big Dill, once again, who competed at an event last year. And talking of events, the Bristol Bot Builders announced they were making a Sportsman Arena. Now, this robot wouldn't be able to compete in it. This is a big version of Maximum Overdrive, and it's very, very scary. Straddle started being built, a new version of that machine, and Grim Reaper was shown for the first time in ages, renamed Caffeine now. Billy won a Norwalk Havoc event, and we all love him for it, and then it was October. In October, I decided to change the format of the news up once again, taking the show live for the first time at the very start of October. And just in time for the filming of BattleBots, as we got to see robots shipping to the event in California, finally, after months of waiting. Meanwhile, over in Norfolk, LEGO Wars began to an awesome start, and people enjoyed a bit of King of Bots action as well, as the smaller weight class fights happened in a very COVID-friendly way. We got to meet a new version of Thunderchild. No longer a kit, this thing is awesome, and Ghost Raptor showed us its final form as the filming for BattleBots finally commenced. The teams prepared themselves, the pits were ready, the robots engaged in combat for the first time in many months. many months. So many months, in fact. So many different designs graced their presence, new and old, legends and upstarts. We are looking forward to seeing all of these robots in action as the series continues to show in the new year. We also saw the face of God in Rusty, and Black Dragon made a shock appearance as they came from Brazil. Atom number 94 is the first robot of Indian descent to compete in BattleBots, as the series really kicked off, and finally the wonderful Pain Train, who we saw being built at Norwalk Havoc, showed off what they've got. November had much more in store as the Sheffield Roboteers Rumble began. This series on YouTube will also continue in the new year. The field was finally revealed to supporters and to the general public alike, as the BattleBots website was updated to show the teams that would be competing in the 2020 season. We got to see what Chomp had been preparing, a juggernaut with a massive hammer, and Deadlift, a shock surprise new team that has recently been told to have a flamethrower, just like this team, Kraken, who fought Black Dragon in one of our first confirmed fights. Meanwhile, Droopy won an event, the first to win with no wheels in a long time, and Robot Rumble 2.0 got several new updates showing robots from the past, present, and future, but probably not the future. A new trailer debuted and we got to see some pictures of some of the fights in the first few episodes. Some Scorpios vs Bloodsport and Hydra vs Witch Doctor action. Nuts and Bots released some new ant weights finally, a shaky ant for me please, and if you want to chuck some money at Chuck, then now's your chance. Meanwhile, Smidsy teased that they would be working with Team Tartan Heart in the new year. Spoiler alert, the ant weight went and competed at an event. Ellis started rebuilding Magnetar in CAD, and a miniature version of Behemoth was built by Team Sub Industries. And so December, the months of waiting were finally over. BattleBots was on the air once again. Fight night began with some awesome fights, including Mad Catter vs Fusion, an explosive fight if ever I saw one, and the main event, of course, Tombstone vs Endgame. My bingo card began, as did everybody else's, and we were introduced to the wonderful Pete Abrahamson as the Bot Whisperer. And the Tale of the Tape after show was back with Witch Doctor and Hypershock. But of course 2020 had to take one more name from us. Sadly, Nick Adams, creator and driver of Wild Thing, passed away. He will be dearly missed by the community. Rest in peace, Nick Adams. BattleBots Bounty Hunters was announced to the public as a spin-off show coming in January. Droopy went and won Norwalk Havoc because of course it did. There was a controversial fight in BattleBots between Beta and Rotator. Another Ampweight event happened in America, this time for Robot Ruckus. LEGO Wars teased some of the robots that would be competing in the future of the show, and Team Shock teased that they want to compete in the future of BattleBots as well. And that just about does it for this year. 2020 has been a challenge, and it is a challenge that we have all struggled through, but fingers crossed that there is a bit of light on the other side of it. Have a very happy new year, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.